All right, why don't we get started? Welcome, everyone, to Pre-Shift, Tidbits of Wisdom for Everyday Service. My name is TJ Griffin, and I'm the Corporate Wine Educator for Winebow. We welcome your questions at any point during the webinar, but please use the Q&A rather than the chat bar to submit them. Now let me introduce your host. Master Sommelier Ron Edwards loves bow ties, although not always in the heat. He's the husband of one wife, the father of 5 girls, and a surfer, which I assume is better in the heat. He has over 29 years of hospitality experience, and since 2018, he has been the Director of Wine Education for Winebow. And now, here to discuss today's topic, a noble art, Mr. Ron Edwards.
Well, hello, Mr. TJ Griffin. Thank you for such a lovely introduction. You get better at this every time. We're just going to just go to radio, I think, just all the time. It's great to be back with everybody. Thanks for joining. I look forward to sharing this with you today. It is a pet topic of mine. I thought of actually starting this series of webinars with it, but I thought it better to set the stage and get people comfortable with me first. To answer your question, TJ, yes, bow ties are less good when it's hot outside, and surfing, while less cumbersome, is certainly more crowded when it's hot outside. So it's a give and take. It's give and take. Today I decided I would blend into the background by accident and wear a color that matches the table in my background picture. Hopefully that's okay with everybody. So if you have questions along the way, yeah, please add them. This is going to be a little bit more of a soliloquy monologue type thing than what we have been doing in the past, but TJ still may jump in depending on what strikes his ear along the way, and he knows he's welcome to sort of jump in and interrupt as we go. This topic, this noble art topic is really, maybe it sounds vague at first, but that's kind of the way I do topics. The idea here is about service and about hospitality and our view of it as hospitality professionals. And I still consider myself that. I may not work in a dining room anymore, but at my core, I am still a dining room sommelier. Started that way, and that's kind of where my heart lies. And I feel like many of you do along the way, with how the world connects with you, how they view what you do. And so it is something I watch on a regular basis, this sort of current state of the hospitality industry, and the way the folks who work in it feel is important to me. And I hope it's actually important to themselves, because it sort of reveals things that they need to be aware of. So if you ask yourself these questions, ask yourself, maybe even pop it in the Q&A, what you think the general opinion of the public toward the hospitality job, the server, the bartender, the busser, the general manager, the hostess at the host stand, or the host at the host stand, when we're talking about restaurants, the person standing at the check-in desk at a hotel. What is the general opinion of these jobs in the public eye? What do you think about that? What's your reaction when someone says to you, you ask them, what is it that you do? You've never met them before, and they say, I'm a waiter, I'm a waitress, I'm a bartender. How does that hit you? And this is not a trap. This is just reality. There are reactions that normal everyday people have to these job titles that are part of the overall feel and scope of what it's like to work in hospitality. So while you're thinking about what you're going to put into Q&A as an answer to that, I'm going to throw you back an example. In 2007, and during the middle of my consulting business, I was invited into Chicago to train for David Burke Steakhouse. And a great place, by the way, lovely wine menu. I love the fact that they always had Madeira from 1908, because that's when the Cubs had won the World Series at that point last. That was always a treat. But the idea here was, somebody who knew me said, hey, come talk to us about service. Come give us examples and give us a roadmap of great service here to reinforce what I'm telling them. And I said, sure, that sounds great. So I wanted to start the conversation from the perspective of getting us all on the same page and letting them know I'm part of their vision as well. And the idea of it was to sort of join them in an applause of what they do. And so there was about, I want to say there was like 20, 22 people in the room, bussers, servers, cocktail servers, managers, bartenders. And I just said, hey, raise your hand if you're proud of what you do. And I was a little taken aback because of how many people raised their hand. So ask yourself, how many people raised their hand out of 22 people working in a celebrity chef's dining room in Chicago, all of them full-time employees? I was addressing a professional audience. In that, my definition of that is that they were full-time employees working as professional hospitality members. So regardless of what they were doing in that regard. And it really changed how I approach everything. This was like a really kind of earth-shattering moment for me because two people out of 22 raised their hand that they were proud of what they do. And I was like, wow, we have such a problem in the hospitality industry here. No wonder when I wander from place to place in the United States, it is overrun with mediocrity in the hospitality industry. People with average or below beverage programs, average or below service programs, average or below training programs, which of course begets all this other stuff because people aren't proud of what they do, because the public opinion of what we do. When we talk to people and we just meet people, we tend to get into this realm of, hi, what's your name? Ron. Where are you from? I'm from Virginia. What do you do? It's like the third question people ask each other. So when people ask that question and somebody responds to them, I'm a waiter, I'm a waitress, I'm a bartender, I'm a busser, I'm a host, I'm a hostess. The best case scenario is that answer is met by the average American with neutrality. And in the worst case scenario, that answer is met with something negative or perceptively negative. And that breaks my heart because it shouldn't be that way. And we have to not want it to be this way anymore. And that's what this is about. I want us as an individual and a team member with you in this world of hospitality to realize we don't have to live like this. This is not the way this was meant to be. But the first thing I always want to deal with is, am I part of the problem? Is something I'm doing causing me and my fellow hospitality professionals to have this view from the public looking in? And we have to look inward. And so I think about it, and I want you to think about it while you're listening to this. Is there something I'm doing, or is there something that I'm involved with as a group of people that keeps us from doing that? And I think we can come up with some easy ones, right? Like, oh, the public looks at this as a job on the way to somewhere else, because it often is. Those well-meaning guests that stood in front of me when I looked a lot younger than I do now and said, so are you in school? Now, I was at one point in school. I waited tables through engineering school. I have a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. It was a great way to earn a living. But then I loved hospitality so much, I never took up engineering and stayed in it. So it was by choice for me. So do you have a real job? If you've ever been in a restaurant and you've worked there long enough, somebody will ask you that question. Why is it that what I'm doing right now is not a real job? What can we do to change that? What are we doing that contributes to some of this mentality? And so some of the things that I've observed as a manager and as a sommelier, and then a general manager and a sommelier, and then as a consultant, is that there is an allowance of bad behavior, and then there is I don't know, best way to put this is people who are in our industry who feel stuck there and can't figure out either how to get out or feel better about what they do. And so I'd like to tell all of us, if you're listening to this and you feel stuck in the hospitality industry, you're not stuck. There are other things to do. But if this is what you've actually like to do and you still feel stuck, then this comment that we're going to make today, this discussion about how not to feel that way, is super important to you. So we have a couple of comments here that are coming up. David said, would you agree that restaurant wine rituals turn off potential customers because they are afraid to be embarrassed? Certainly that is a reality. We have to be very careful about how we present wine in restaurants. And that's sort of how this whole webinar series has been involved, right? So if you go back to the first 30 seconds, and if you look at Wine by the Glass program webinar, and if you look at the discussion on weird grapes, grapes aren't weird, we are, all of that was pointed at that question of like, all right, in restaurants, the way we present wine to people is going to either help them find what they like or get in their way. And then some people view it as a profession career, while others view it as a temporary only job between jobs, right? While pursuing something else. Today's circumstances of physical distancing, making it even more difficult and complicated. Yeah, those are all true. And I think you're referring to hospitality employees in general. And so here's the secret. Those of us who want this to be a profession cannot tolerate those who drag us down, continuing to drag us down without doing something about it. And really, we can't really change them as people, right? That's just true. I mean, if you look at any kind of self-help book or help others kind of mentality, they have to want to change, but they might want to change if we show them that there's a better path. And that's what looking inside means. And so if you're hanging on to this idea that I've been beat in the dirt by the public or by life in general about this is a profession or not, then just don't listen to it anymore. This is absolutely a profession, and I'm going to make sure that you have an opportunity today to latch onto something far better than I just wait tables. You have to, beginning first step is to take pride in what you do. I was raised by parents who always told me that whatever job you have is the most important job you'll ever have while you have it. And it bleeds over into, these jobs that were on the way to somewhere else. It also bled into that, right? Well, okay, maybe I don't want to do this forever because I'm in a degree program to do that. But adopting the pride to say, this is the most important job I have because I have it, changes the way you approach it. So, and what we have to do is have pride in what we're doing. Sometimes, oddly, we have to have more pride in what we're doing than even the business for which we're working has pride in what they're doing. But that changes things too. And I've seen it over and over again. I often bring up a point here. There's a gentleman who's a friend of mine now. And when I was consulting for a restaurant, he was that person that had been in the industry as a server for a very long time, almost my age, 20 plus years of waiting tables. And you could tell he was just jaded. He was like, his wife was a different kind of professional, somebody who from the outside looking in by the public would be judged immediately as a professional. And I could see that it was weighing on him, that he didn't seem to have the same strength of purpose in life. And it was really a joy to show him this thought process and challenge him to adopt service as a mantra and to have pride in what he does. And it was really fascinating to watch over a couple of years go from jaded to interested to taking sommelier exams to then just all of a sudden he's a leader in this dining room where he was kind of a grumpy follower before. So it is entirely possible to do this. And it really is all about mindset. It is about learning to know that service is absolutely noble, absolutely noble. And we can see this outside of the hospitality industry just by looking around and saying, okay, look at all of these people that get the labels of professional, pick one. Even in really high-end jobs, we see people on a regular basis taking their own personal time to volunteer in a nonprofit or a public service kind of way to get that feeling of service, because serving other people is just a core feel-good thing. We're just designed to do it. When you look through major philosophies and religions, serving other people is a key element in all of them. Why? Because people honestly were meant to do it. And when you don't have it as part of your immediate profession, you end up seeking it out by doing things for other people, by joining nonprofit organizations, by being part of the local food bank or whatever, so that part of your life gives you the feeling of serving others. In the hospitality industry, we get to have that feeling every day if we choose. If that's the way we view our job. If serving other people, even though I'm being paid for it, is viewed as first serving another person, putting them first, then the job is easy. And the attitude you get out of it is just a joy. When we look at the things you can do in life, serving somebody else is one of the most noble things you can do. Putting somebody else first. That's our mindset. When we walk into the world of hospitality and we decide on our own, regardless of what the training program looks like, regardless of management, regardless of guests, that this is the service of others and it's noble, it changes how we view what we do. Noble activities require your attention. Noble activities are a source of personal pride, not self-righteousness, but a pride in what you're doing. Noble actions are a pursuit, not a job. If we want to earn back the respect and professional status of the hospitality industry as a whole, each one of us, one person at a time, one job at a time, one business at a time, needs to adopt service as a noble pursuit. Something that is worthy of our attention because it's the right thing to do. So if we pursue service as a noble art form, it becomes a profession to us. And if we are professionals, then servers and dining room employees in general know their menu as well as the chef knows their menu, because that's what professionals do. Servers and dining room employees know their beverage program as well as anybody, because that's what professionals do. Servers and dining room employees put guests first because in this context, that's what professionals do. When we want to be noble in our service, it's reflected in the way we wear our clothes, the way we stand in the dining room, and all the things that I've talked about so far are all part of, including the other webinars, are all part of service as a noble art form. I want to bring into mind the idea of the professional butler, because the world of the sommelier is really rooted in the idea of the butler, this individual that was at every turn at the service of their employer, knowing their moods, knowing their likes and dislikes, knowing when to engage, when to walk away, when to listen, when to pretend not to listen, but always listening so that you knew what was there. Noble professionals do those kind of things. And great service is about making sure that the other person is center of mind. And one of the first things we can do to start down the path of noble is to start being kind to guests and stop being nice. Yes, I did say that. Stop being nice to your guests. Because nice is superficial. There is such a huge difference between being kind to someone sitting at your tables and being nice to them. Because when you are kind, it requires you to engage in their life. Because in order to be kind, you have to search out what would make them happy in this moment. Because kindness is all about them. Being nice is a superficial, all about you. And those are two very different things. Great hospitality, noble service is about kindness. Brillat Savarin said, to entertain a guest is to take charge of his happiness for the entire time he is with you. That is the best definition of service I have ever found. To entertain a guest means to take charge of his happiness for the entire time he is with you. Wow. But he came in grumpy before I met him. Yep, take charge of his happiness. The two of them are arguing. I don't know what to do. Take charge of their happiness. He doesn't like this beverage. Take charge of their happiness. They want a different table. Take charge of their happiness. What do you mean they want ice in their wine? Take charge of their happiness. Their happiness. You don't have to drink the wine. You don't have to sit at the table. You don't have to leave with him and argue on the way home either. Take charge of his happiness. Because when this happens, you will experience something that's really unique. And that is a joy of being at work. You will actually get in your section if you're a server, or in the dining room if you're covering the whole thing as a sommelier. And all of a sudden, it's fun. And the challenge is to see how happy you can make them. It's no longer like, can I survive this 6-hour shift? It's revelational, honestly. And it's something that I miss terribly, because that was the joy of being on the floor. Because when I changed their moment in time by listening and then bringing them what they really wanted, I experienced joy. But the funny part is, they think they're the ones experiencing joy. So it's this two-sided joy that makes the magic happen in dining rooms. And it doesn't start with them. It starts with you. So there's only one way to do this. And that is, this is your charge. In order to start down this path, you have to start every day before you run out the door to go to work. And you have to look yourself in the mirror, eye to eye. And you have to say, it's not about me. It's never been about me. And it's never going to be about me. And then go to work. And when you do that, and you live into that in your dining room, in your hotel, you will experience what I just talked about. And when that happens, please email me, because I'm on a mission to inspire some of you to change the hospitality industry in the United States for the better. And this is how we do it. Thank you so much for listening. Any questions would be great at this point. TJ, if you want to jump in, go right ahead.
Sure. Well, this isn't a question, but we have some emoji applause from Dina. So, and I think she's a lot of us. Well said, Ron. This is such an important topic, because I worked for a long time in restaurants, and I was often made to feel that what I was doing was not noble, and it was just a pit stop on the way to somewhere else. When are you going to get a real job?
Mm-hmm.
You alluded to, and it's not the best feeling.
No, it's a terrible feeling.
What about, and this has happened to me and maybe some others on the call here, perhaps it's happened to you. What about when you're made to feel that way, or made to feel that what you're doing isn't noble by a leader in the restaurant, perhaps a manager, or even worse, the owner?
Yeah, that's really hard. And this has happened, right? So, part of who I am is also wrapped up in the idea of working for one of those chefs. In that environment, I wasn't going to get the encouragement I needed necessarily, and the statement of vision of what I just said from him. But when I lived into it, my guests gave me all of the reinforcement that I needed. And then when they weren't giving it to me, I saw the little light bulbs go on in my staff, where somebody would suddenly go, oh, this can be different if I do it the way Ron's doing it. And I'm not the only one in the world that does it this way. but that's how it works. It's like, okay, while I'm here, instead of letting the attitudes and condemnation even of ownership or management ruin me, I'm going to still allow my influence, because I'm going to be me and I'm going to enjoy the kindness and joy of hospitality. Because I think that it can be applied in anybody's rules. I guess the only place maybe it doesn't apply is one of those restaurants that's the concept is to be rude to the guests because it's supposed to be entertainment, but even then there's supposed to be some service kindness. Looks like we're adding some questions here.
Yes, Julia sort of asked a question sort of while I was asking mine about the same thing, about, you know, how to do that when you're surrounded by a toxic work environment, which is always unfortunate.
Yeah, and there are a lot of toxic work environments, and they are most often a result of the fact that of what we're talking about, that the people who work there feel like they have no other choice. And so instead of embracing the nobility of service, they complain about the guests, they complain about management, they complain. It becomes a toxic work environment. It's places like that you also, nobody wants to do their side work. So there's always a fight over side work, and all of those things happen, right? But where is light the strongest? Where does the light have its strongest influence? In the middle of a bright day or in a very dark night, right? So Julia, go out and act this way, and that toxic environment will move away from you because it can't touch you. It'll still bother you a little bit, but because you are so secure in what you are doing and knowing that the kindness towards the guest is the right thing to do and that service is noble, it will spread out. Other people will notice. They'll start copying you in some ways because they see that your life is different. It really does work that way. David's talking about the ritual again. TJ, can you weed through that and see what I can respond to?
Yeah, I think the crux is if a very formal service is off-putting to some, do you have any ideas, or maybe you've done in the past a maybe more friendly ritual for those not familiar with wine and restaurants to make them more comfortable?
Yeah, that's good. That goes back to reading your guests. And I have done everything from as I would do it at the MS exam for a guest, because I could tell that that's what they really thought was great service, to something more casual. But I have, even in the idea of making it more casual, I never break cardinal rules, like pouring from the left with my right hand, because that's elbow to the back of their face, and it's just not acceptable. Dialing back from formal ritual in the middle of service is okay. It's kind of like what fits your environment, but when you dial it back, don't lose sight of what is guest-centered in service and why those rules are there in formal service. You can dial them back and be very familiar and very friendly with people, without alienating them, and without giving bad technical service while you're making friendly hospitality. So David, I think this is one of those that maybe we have a phone call about, so you can give me some exact things, or just send me an email and we'll set up an appointment. I'll be happy to talk you through, like, all right, what are you actually talking about? Because it's hard to address it in a giant generality. Anything else up there, TJ?
This is topical from Michael. I think it's an important question. Can you offer advice for taking charge of guests' happiness in this time of COVID, while they may have additional anxiety or concern about being in a restaurant?
Oh, I think that's a great question, Michael. I think the reality is, what would we want done for ourselves? Like, I know that if I ask myself, what would I want done for me in this moment, I'm probably going to make them a pretty good decision. Right? So in the case of COVID, where people are always nervous about how close you are to them and what you're saying to them and all of that stuff, being very clean looking is huge, right? Like if you walk up to a table and you look pristine, your apron's clean, your hands look clean, your shirt's clean, your mask is clean because you're going to be wearing a mask. That's step one. And then second is being very respectful of their space, because we can't do our service mantras and methodology the way we used to, where, you know, dining rooms were fairly crowded and you had to get close to people. Now they're spaced out, right? Because nobody can sit next to each other anymore. So use that space to your advantage. But remember that with a mask on, people, you don't realize, none of us realized how much we read lips, right? Until we go out now, we're in public, we're speaking to somebody with a mask on, they're speaking to us with a mask on, and we're like, what are you saying? I can't hear you. Well, what you're saying is, I sort of hear you, but I can't see your lips moving, so I'm not sure what you're saying. So keep that in mind as you are guiding either people you're training or you're that person, that mask is now a barrier to you, between you and the guest. It's a needed barrier, but it's a sound barrier. So make sure that you speak more slowly and that you enunciate and ask them, I'm sorry, can you hear me well enough? The mask is unfortunate. And I've had that interaction with people several times already in the last couple of months, and we all laugh about it and we move on because we know it's essential. It's a great question though.
I think that that's going to be our last question. We went a little long, but this is such an important topic, and these words are so important to hear right now. So I'm grateful for hearing them, and thank you.
Michael was talking about he's going to try and use a version of this
Yes.
with his people. I wanted to point him. My old company website is bottlerocketeers.com. And on the blog section is an essay that is a shorter form of this to keep you in the ballpark of what the talk was, if that helps you. Or if you want, you can go to YouTube, because this one's going to be live in a little while. We'll fix the recording, and you can actually just show the video to your staff if you want, if you feel like that is as effective for you. Okay.
If you're feeling down, you could watch it on YouTube, maybe at twice the speed, so you have time to do it on your way to work.
That's a great idea. So you really have to be kind.
Not as serene, but still get you psyched up for the day.
There you go.
Don't forget to join us. Very intriguing topic name here. Theory of Relativity in 2 weeks on July 28th at the same time, 3 p.m. Please join us then.
Yep, we're going to talk about how to relate one grape to another so that you can sell one grape because a guest knows that grape over there.
So it's not about physics.
No, not about physics, thankfully, because I don't remember that much of Einstein's theories anymore.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Stay safe. Have a great day. See you next time.